Several hours ago, the Lord revealed something to me that was quite interesting. It caused me to really think about it. What I'm referring to was something that He mentioned to the disciples on the Mount of Olives, according to the book of Matthew, chapter 24. It says here in verse 37, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. Let me explain to you what I'm trying to communicate in this video. Let's go back into time, back into the book of Genesis. Many of you are familiar with the story regarding Noah. He was living in a time of wickedness. Fallen angels were having sex with women, and sin across the board was just bonkers, and that's just an understatement. It was just crazy at the time. So the Lord told Noah to build this ark. Many of you are familiar with that. I believe that while he was building it, his neighbors, strangers, and everyone else came around and they were making fun of him. Oh, look at you wasting your time building that big boat for what? You know? So after the boat was completed, as you know, the Lord instructed Noah and the animals to enter the boat with his family, and then the Lord himself shut the door. That's interesting. The scripture is clear that the Lord closed the door. And when he closed the door, he, according to history, because the Bible is a historical book, according to history, Noah and his family became the first lockdown family, you see. Many of us are on lockdown right now, but we have to keep in mind that before we were born, Noah had to go through it. For a very long time, he was on that boat. And while he was on that boat, the Lord passed judgment on the rest of the world. But here's the interesting thing. Going back to what Jesus said, he said, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. When Noah left the boat, he experienced a world that wasn't the same like before. He entered a new world, you see. Sin was still around, definitely. When if you continue to read, you're going to run into the story about the Tower of Babel and many other stories after that. But the point is that when he entered the world, what was there before the storm, before the building of the ark, that was gone. And when I read this verse that I just read to you, that right there reminds me of our time right now. I believe that when the storm clears, when the coronavirus just fades away, I mean, it's not going to go completely away, but you know what I'm saying. When we get the green light from the powers that be, when they will come out publicly and say that you can go back to work, businesses are now open, when we hear that stuff, I believe that there will be not one, but there will be several obstacles against the church. And one of those obstacles is in place right now, and I believe that it will be carried over after the coronavirus becomes a thing in the past. And that thing that I'm referring to is social distancing. You see, in my last video, I mentioned the fact that when I was at the local market, I saw several signs in the store that says that social distancing is now the law. When I read that, I said to myself, I cannot ever recall going into a store, filled with multiple signs talking about one specific law. You see what I mean? And I'm saying to myself that this right here will eventually become a huge obstacle for believers, because this will make it just a little bit more difficult for us to reach out to others with the gospel of Christ. You see, right now social distancing is being promoted on a global scale, and a lot of people are, you know, easily just allowing themselves to fall in line with that way of thinking, and they are using the powers that be, in my opinion, are using this with the intent, I believe, to make it difficult for believers to come out with the gospel. You see, I believe also that those right now who are becoming accustomed to social distancing, after the smoke clears, after the coronavirus is, you know, when this virus becomes like any other virus, like the regular flu or whatever, I believe that these individuals right now will still continue to carry that way of thinking after the smoke clears. And I believe that when we at that time try to reach out to them, they won't even get close to us. Literally, they would just stand several feet away. And I believe that's going to happen. Earlier today, I was browsing through YouTube and I came across a live broadcast. This was about a press conference by Governor Cuomo. He was going to address the public regarding, you know, the coronavirus and what's happening over here in New York City. And before he appeared at the press conference, they were showing a live broadcast of the folks who were preparing themselves. I'm referring to the press, who were gathering together at that spot. And I noticed several folks from the press sitting about 10 to 15 feet apart from each other while wearing masks. And when I saw that, which is something that I never ever seen before in a press conference, I said to myself that this social distancing thing is really going to expand, and it's not going to fade away. It's not going to die out. This was something cooked up by the prince of the powers of the air with the intent to make it harder for the church to come out with the gospel. And that is just something that I want to, in closing, leave you guys with. Pray about that. Be watchful. And no matter what happens, no matter what, always keep in mind that the Lord is in control. And Jesus himself said, always be of good cheer, because he has already conquered the world. This is the Preacher Man signing out. May the Lord Yeshua Mashiach bless you all and your loved ones. And in Yeshua's holy name, I say, Amen. Peace.